Jack moved slowly through the thick alien forest. The trees were tall, glowing faintly with blue veins. The air smelled sweet, but it was full of danger. He had been here for weeks now, hunting for food, searching for something useful. His trap. With simpler rope snare hidden between two trees. It wasn't high-tech, but it worked. Yesterday he caught a 3-legged deer. Today, he hoped for something bigger. Maybe something that wouldn't run so fast. The sun, or whatever this planet called a sun, rose slowly behind the trees. Its greenish light lit the leaves, and Jack followed the same path he always did. He carried a knife on his hip, a small scanner in one hand and his backpack on his shoulder. His boots sank into the wet moss as he walked. Then he heard it, a sound. Not an animal's cry, not a machine. It was a voice, soft, broken whimpering. He stopped, heart beating faster. He turned toward the sound, and that's when he saw it. Something was trapped in his snare. Not a beast. Not a wild alien creature. It was a girl, or at least she looked like a girl. Small, thin, her skin pale with a soft purple tint. Her hair was silver, tangled and hanging over her face. She hung from the rope by one ankle, upside down, shaking. Jack froze. This wasn't what he expected. She didn't look dangerous. She looked scared. She noticed him and let out a sharp cry. Her arms came up, trying to shield her face. Jack stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." Of course, she didn't understand him. Her large silver eyes were wide with fear. She trembled like a leaf in the wind. Jack looked around, wondering if someone was chasing her. She was alone. No one else moved in the forest. Birds chirped in the trees. Unaware that something strange was happening below, he took out his knife. The girl gasped, twisting harder in the rope. She thought he was going to cut her, maybe harm her, but instead, he cut the rope. She dropped to the ground with a soft thud and scrambled backward. She hit the tree and curled up, arms around her knees. Breathing fast, Jack crouched nearby. Leaving space between them, he took out his water bottle and placed it gently on the ground. She watched with alert eyes, like a wild animal ready to run. Then, slowly, she reached out, grabbed the bottle, and drank. Water spilled down her chin. But she didn't stop. She was thirsty, very thirsty. Now that she was closer, Jack saw the marks on her skin, bruises, cuts, and strange lines glowing faintly on her arms. They didn't look natural. It looked like someone had hurt her, controlled her maybe. She wasn't just lost, she was running, hiding, maybe even escaping from something far worse. He tried to speak. Again, using slow words, simple gestures. "Safe," he said, placing a hand over his chest. "Help," he added, pointing to her leg, which was bleeding. She looked down and winced. He opened his pack, pulled out a small medkit when he moved toward her. She flinched again. He stopped, waited, and only moved when she gave a small nod. He cleaned the wound, wrapped it gently, all while she stared at him like he was something unreal. After a while, she whispered a word. It was soft, but he caught it. "Tira." Maybe that was her name. He nodded, repeating, "Tira." She looked surprised, then gave the tiniest nod. Jack knew he couldn't leave her here. She wouldn't survive the night alone. He looked at her. This strange and fragile alien girl. He didn't know where she came from. He didn't know who hurt her. But he knew one thing: he couldn't walk away. The forest grew darker, and a cold wind began to blow. He stood up and offered her his hand. She looked at it, scared, unsure, but slowly, she reached out and placed her hand in his. Together, they walked toward his small wooden shelter. The forest watched in silence, and far above them, hidden behind clouds, a ship moved slowly, scanning the land. Tira didn't see it, but Jack felt something. Something was coming. And whatever it was, Whips was looking for her. Tira sat on the edge of the cot, her knees pulled close to her chest. She stared at the wooden floor, unmoving, as if her mind was somewhere far away. Jack stood a few feet away, pouring water into a tin cup. Shelter was small, only one room, made of old metal sheets and wood. But it was dry, warm, and hidden deep in the forest. He turned and walked over to her slowly, careful not to startle her. "Here," he said softly. Placing the cup beside her, Tira didn't look up. She didn't speak. She hadn't said a single word since they reached the hut, just one name earlier, Tira. After that, silence. Jack sat down near the fire, not too close, just enough for her to feel safe. He pulled out a protein bar, opened it, and began to eat. He hoped the smell would tempt her, and it did. Her eyes flickered toward the food. Then away, she was hungry. That much was clear. He placed the other half of the bar near her. Still, she didn't touch it. She only stared at the wall like it might come alive and attack her. Jack sighed quietly. This was going to take time. He had never met an alien before who acted like this. He had seen wild ones, aggressive ones, even robotic ones. But this girl, she was something else. She looked broken. Suddenly, she made a soft sound. Not a word, more like a whimper. Jack turned his head. Her hands were shaking, eyes wide with fear. She was looking at the door. Jack followed her gaze. There was nothing there. Only the wooden door locked from inside. Still, Tira backed against the wall as if someone was coming through it. Jack stood slowly, keeping his voice calm. "It's okay," he said. "No one's coming." But Tira didn't calm down. Instead, she whispered something in her own language. He didn't understand it, but the pain in her voice was clear. Jack walked to the door, tapped it twice to show it was strong. Then he pointed to himself and said, "Jack." He smiled gently. "My name is Jack." Tira blinked, confused. He repeated it again, pointing to his chest. Jack then pointed to her. "Tira." She nodded slowly. That was progress. He tried again, using gestures and soft words. "Safe," he said, pointing to the roof. "No danger." He showed her the door lock, turned it tightly, then said, "Safe," again, still. Tira didn't speak, but this time she nodded just a little. Later that evening, Jack made soup from dried vegetables and forest roots. The smell filled the room. Tira's stomach growled, and her eyes followed every motion of his hands. He offered her a bowl. This time, she took it. Her fingers were thin, and she held the bowl like it was a treasure. She sipped slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned not to waste even a drop as she ate. Jack noticed the strange lines on her arms again. They weren't just scars. They glowed faintly under the firelight symbols. Maybe a language, maybe tech. They looked almost burned into her skin. He didn't ask her about them, not yet. When she finished eating, she sat back down on the cot and pulled the blanket around her. She didn't speak, but her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed just a little. She was still afraid, but less than before. Jack kept the fire burning low and stayed awake, watching over her. His thoughts were spinning. Where did she come from? Why was she in the forest? Why was she so scared? And most of all, who had hurt her? In the middle of the night, Jack heard a sound, a soft sob. He turned and saw Tira curled tightly under the blanket. Shaking, tears rolled down her face, but she didn't make a sound. She was crying silently, like someone who had learned it was dangerous to be heard. Jack didn't go to her. He didn't speak. He just sat by the fire and whispered, "You're safe now." Even if she didn't understand his words, maybe she could feel them. The next morning, sunlight peeked through the cracks in the roof. Tira sat up slowly, blinking at the light. She looked at Jack, who was stirring the fire for breakfast, and then, in a soft, broken voice, she said one word in English, "Thank." Jack looked up, surprised. She pointed to the soup bowl. He smiled, nodded. "You're welcome," he replied. It was small, just one word. But it was the beginning of something bigger. Tira had spoken, and Jack knew, deep in his gut. She was starting to trust him. The morning light filtered through the wooden cracks in the shelter. Birds chirped in the alien forest, their sounds both strange and beautiful. Tira sat quietly near the fire, her thin hands wrapped around a warm cup. Jack watched her from across the room. Something had changed since yesterday. She was still quiet, still shy, but her eyes no longer looked like she was about to run. Jack handed her a clean cloth and motioned toward her bruised leg. "Let me check it," he said gently. Tira hesitated, then nodded. She pulled up her pant leg slowly, revealing the wrapped wound from the trap. It looked better now, less swollen. Jack cleaned it, applied some ointment, and rewrapped it. Tira watched him carefully, her silver eyes full of questions. But she still didn't speak. Then Jack noticed something. Just under her shirt, near her shoulder, a strange light, soft, pulsing, almost hidden. "Tira," he said quietly, pointing toward her back. "Can I?" He mimed the motion of lifting her shirt slightly. She stared at him, still and nervous. After a moment, she turned her back to him. Jack gently lifted the fabric. What he saw made his breath catch. There, between her shoulder blades, was a glowing mark. It looked like a brand shaped like a ring of sharp lines. Symbols he didn't recognize. The skin around it was scarred, red, as if it had been burned there. The light inside it pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. "Tira," Jack whispered, "what is this?" Tira hugged herself, looking down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Tracker," she said. Jack's eyes widened. "A tracker," he repeated. She nodded slowly. "Pain," she added. Her hand went to the mark and trembled slightly. Jack sat back, his mind racing. So she was being tracked, marked like an object, and worse, she said it caused pain. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. Tira shook her head, refusing to answer. She closed her eyes, as if just remembering hurt too much. Jack didn't press her. He sat beside her, silent for a while, thinking the mark was a problem, not just for her, but for both of them. If someone was tracking her, they might already be on their way. He stood up and went to his metal box, pulling out an old scanner device. It was broken in parts, but he had repaired enough of it to use for basic readings. He waved it near the mark. The screen blinked red, then showed alien symbols. He couldn't read them, but he understood what they meant. Active signal. "Tira, this needs to be shut off," he said firmly. She looked scared. "Remove?" she asked, voice shaking. "I don't know how," Jack admitted, "but I'll try." Tira stared at the fire for a long time, then gave a small nod. "Try," she whispered. Jack spent the rest of the day looking through his tech pile. He had spare parts from an old alien drone he found last year. He also had wires, tools, and one cracked data chip that might still work. As the sun dipped below the forest edge, he worked with care. Tira watched from the corner, arms around her knees. Her face was pale, her fingers tense. Later that night, Jack called her over. "I made this," he said, holding up a small device. "It might block the signal for now." She stepped forward slowly, like she was approaching a storm. He showed her how it worked. 2 prongs that would touch the edge of the mark. A soft pulse would disrupt the signal. It wouldn't remove it, but it might stop the pain. She nodded and turned her back to him. Jack placed the device gently on the glowing mark. Tira winced but didn't move. He pressed the switch. The device hummed softly. The glow in the mark flickered once, twice, and then faded. Tira gasped, falling forward slightly, then froze. Jack moved to catch her, but she waved him off and stood up straight. She touched her back, blinking. "No pain," she whispered. Almost in shock, Jack smiled. "Good," he said. She turned to face him, her face softer now, Her eyes met his, and something passed between them. Trust, maybe even gratitude. "You helped," she said. 2 words, but they meant everything. Jack nodded. "I will keep helping." The fire cracked beside them, warm and comforting, outside. The forest slept quietly, but in the dark skies far above, something moved. A ship. Silent and watching, received a broken signal. A faint trail from a tracker that had gone dark. Tira didn't know, Jack didn't know. But time was running out, and soon, their peace would be tested. Asterisk, the wind had changed. Jack noticed it before the animals did. The birds were quieter. The trees too still. Something was wrong, and it wasn't the weather. He stepped outside the hut and scanned the sky. There was nothing yet, not to the eyes but in his chest. He felt it, a deep, slow pressure, like the air before a storm. Inside the hut, Tira sat with a blanket around her. Holding Jack's old map, she had begun to understand a few more words, and even tried speaking sometimes. Her voice was soft but clearer each day. "Forest End," she said, pointing to a red line on the map. Jack walked back in, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Yeah," he said, "that's where the old mining zone starts." Tira's eyes narrowed. "No safe." Jack nodded. "Not safe. I agree." She seemed nervous today, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Why?" he asked, sitting beside her. Tira took a moment, then whispered, "They come." Jack froze. "Who?" She looked up, her silver eyes filled with fear. "Hunters," she said, her voice cracking. Jack leaned forward. "The ones who put the mark on you." Tira nodded slowly. "Not just chase," she whispered. "They take." Her words hung heavy in the room. It wasn't just about escaping. Tira had been taken before, maybe many times. Jack clenched his fists, standing up. "We're not letting them find you," he said. Tira stared at him. Surprised. "You help?" she asked, like she still didn't believe it. "Yes," he said, "I help, but outside." Help was far away, and the hunters were getting closer. That evening, while gathering firewood near the edge of the river, Jack heard a low hum. He looked up and saw a faint shimmer in the sky. A ship almost invisible passing silently above the forest. Not a cargo ship, not a rescue pod. It was something else. He dropped the wood and ran back to the hut. "Tira." He shouted, "Hide." She looked confused, then saw the panic in his face, without a word. She ran to the trapdoor under the floor. Jack opened it quickly and helped her down, covering her with thick cloth and supplies. "Don't move. No sound," he whispered. She nodded and disappeared into the shadows. A red light swept across the sky outside. Then came the sound of engines deep, slow, watching. Jack stood at the window with his old rifle. His heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. If they landed, he was ready to fight, but the ship didn't land. It hovered for a moment, scanned the area, and moved on. Jack waited until the noise faded completely before opening the trapdoor. "Tira," he whispered. She peeked up, eyes wide but calm. "They here?" "Not yet," Jack said, "but they're looking." That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He worked on making the cabin more securating, more cover. Stacking wood along the walls. He knew it wouldn't stop a full attack, but it would. By time, Tara sat by the fire, tracing a small pattern on the wooden floor. It looked like a symbol, one she kept drawing over and over. "What is it?" Jack asked. She looked up. "Home." Jack sat beside her. "You had a home?" She nodded. "Long ago, before they came." Her voice was full of pain. She didn't cry, but her silence screamed louder than tears. "I was small." She whispered, "They take girls, sell, make them quiet." Jack felt cold all over. He had heard rumors of such things in deep space dark markets. Unspoken deals, but hearing it from her made it real. He put a hand gently on her shoulder. "No one's taking you again," he said firmly. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time, Tira leaned into him, just a little, her head resting on his shoulder. And for a few minutes, she didn't. Tremble, but far away, in the hills beyond the forest, a campfire burned. Several tall figures stood around a machine tracking, scanning, waiting. One of them pressed a button, and a red light blinked twice. A weak signal had been received. "Target not moving," the hunter said. "Close," another one replied. "Tomorrow, we strike." The next morning, the forest was quiet again. Too quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even wind. Jack stood outside his cabin, scanning the sky. He didn't like this silence. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Inside, Tira was sitting near the fire, her fingers tracing the same symbol on the floor. She hadn't said much since the red lights passed overhead, but Jack could see something had changed. She was scared, yes, but not frozen anymore. She was thinking, planning, ready to act. He walked back inside and placed a box of old tech on the table. "Today, we fixed that tracker," he said. Tira looked up, eyes wide. "No pain again?" she asked softly. "I'll make sure of it," Jack replied. The device Jack had built before only shut down the signal. It didn't remove the tracker. And last night, he saw the glow return for a moment, just a blink, but enough to know it wasn't fully off. That meant the hunters might have gotten a ping. They were closing in. Time was running out. He opened the tech box and began pulling out pieces. A cracked scanner, old wires, a damaged alien control pad, everything he'd scavenged over the years. Tira sat beside him, curious, watching his hands work. "You build like Maker," she said, surprising him. "Maker. On my world. People who fix, shape, save." Jack smiled. "Guess I'm one of them now." Together, they assembled a new tool. This one had a pulse disruptor, a frequency dampener, and a low signal rewriter. It was risky. If it failed, it could hurt her. But if it worked, Tit could destroy the tracker for good. "Tira," he said, holding the finished device. "This might burn a little." She nodded slowly. "I trust," she whispered. Jack helped her sit down and turn around. The mark on her back was glowing faintly again. Not bright, but enough. To make his chest tighten, he placed the device carefully against the edge of the mark. It began to hum. Tira flinched as a tiny spark jumped across her skin. "Keep going," she said quickly. Jack turned the dial, increasing the frequency. The mark flickered, then dimmed. Then suddenly, a loud buzz filled the room. The device sparked and died in his hand. "No," Jack muttered. Pulling it away, the glow on her back returned. "Brighter now," Tira cried out. Clutching her chest, "It hurts," she whispered, falling forward. Jack caught her before she hit the ground. He placed her gently on the cat and grabbed his tools again. "No time to test," he muttered. "We finish this now," while Tira rested. Jack worked, sweat running down his face. He stripped wires, connected new energy cells, replaced broken nodes. His hands moved fast, but steady. He couldn't afford a second failure. Minutes later, he was ready. This time, the device pulsed softly before making contact. He pressed it to the mark again. A high-pitched tone rang out steady. Sharp, then silent. The mark sparked, glowed bright, then dimmed. Tira gasped and arched her back. Eyes wide, then the mark vanished. It didn't fade, disappeared. Jack stepped back, holding his breath. Tira lay still for a few seconds, then opened her eyes slowly. She looked at her hands, touched her shoulder. No pain. She said in disbelief. She sat up quickly, searching for the glow. Nothing. "Gone," she whispered. Jack nodded. "Gone." He confirmed. Tira's lips trembled. Then she did something he didn't expect. She hugged him, tight, like someone holding the last warm thing in a cold world. Jack froze for a second, then placed a gentle hand on her back. "You're free now," he said softly. Tira pulled back, tears in her eyes. "Not just body," she said slowly. "Inside too," but their peace didn't last. A loud boom echoed in the distance. The ground shook under their feet. Jack rushed outside and saw black smoke rising over the treetops. The hunters had landed. They were burning the forest-clearing paths. Tira joined him, her eyes wide with horror. "They close," she whispered. Jack grabbed his rifle. "We need to move," he said. Now they packed quickly, only food, tools, and the new device. Jack helped Tira onto his old transport sled. They sped into the deeper part of the forest behind them. Red lights began to sweep across the trees again, but this time Jack wasn't just running, he was protecting something precious. And Tira wasn't just a frightened girl anymore. She was a survivor, free, awake, and ready to fight for that freedom. Ahead of them lay darkness, but behind them, fire and steel followed fast. The real hunt had begun. Asterisk smoke filled the sky. Behind them, the forest burned in patches, not by accident, but by design. The hunters were forcing them out, pushing them toward open ground. Jack drove the transport sled faster, branches snapping against his arms. Tira held on behind him, her eyes scanning the skies. Red lights passed overhead search beams. The hunters weren't just chasing now, they were closing in. Jack turned the sled down a steep path and stopped in a deep cave hidden by overgrowth. "We rest here," he said. Breath short, Tira nodded, sliding off the sled, her legs weak, but steady. The cave was dark and cool, safer now, but the quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like a pause before something worse. Tira sat beside the wall, holding Jack's broken scanner. "It gone," she whispered. "The mark, the pain." The voice in head. Jack looked at her, confused. Voice. Tira touched her temple. "They send words to control, to punish." Jack felt a cold wave run through him. The tracker hadn't just followed, Hurt had commanded her. "You're free now," he said firmly, but Tira shook her head. "No. One free if they still run," that hit him hard. Jack sat down across from her, rifle across his knees. "You want to stop running?" She nodded slowly. "Then we fight," he said. Night came fast, and with it their enemies. A screech echoed through the trees. Not animal, not human, something sharp and cruel. Tira stood quickly, her eyes glowing faintly in the cave's dim light. "They hear," she whispered. Jack peeked outside. 3 tall figures moved through the brush, dressed in black armor with glowing red helmets. They carried weapons shaped like hooks and spears. Hunters, just like she said. He grabbed a small EMP mine from his pack. "Stay inside," he told her. She grabbed his arm. "No, I come." Jack hesitated. "You sure?" "I am not weak," she said, voice calm. Together they crawled through the side of the cave and took position behind rocks. Jack aimed the rifle while Tira held one of the alien shock devices he had salvaged. Her hands were steady now, not trembling like before. The first hunter stepped into view. Jack fired, the shot hitting the side of its chest. It stumbled, but didn't fall. They were stronger than normal beings, faster too. The second one spotted them and threw a net launcher. Jack rolled aside just in time. Tira leaped forward, her body moving faster than he thought possible. She pressed the shock device to the hunter's chest. Electricity exploded, and the hunter dropped, screaming. She didn't stop. She grabbed the alien's fallen weapon and turned to the others. Jack covered her, firing round after round. His rifle overheated, and he dropped it. Switching to a blade, the third hunter charged. Jack met him head-on, steel clashing with alien metal. Era's stolen weapon fired a blue pulse that knocked the final hunter back into the trees. Silence returned, but only for a moment. A deep rumble shook the earth. More ships were arriving. "They send more," Tira said. breathing hard. Jack looked at her cuts on her arms. Dirt on her face, but eyes sharp and focused. "You did good," he said. She looked away, then whispered, "You helped me believe." They ran back to the sled and took off again, but this time, they didn't head deeper into the forest. They turned toward the cliffs where Jack had seen a communication tower long ago. "We call for help," Jack said. Tara nodded. "Or make them afraid." They reached the old tower before sunrise. It was broken, but parts of it still stood tall. Together, they used the alien parts Jack had collected wiring Tira's stolen tech into the signal dish. "I send a message," she said. "To who?" Jack asked. She looked at him with fire in her eyes. "To the ones still hiding." She spoke into the mic in her language, strong, powerful words Jack didn't understand, but he knew their meaning. She was calling others like her. Others who had run, others who had marks. She was telling them they weren't alone anymore. The tower sparked to life, light flashing through the trees, but it also sent a signal one the hunters saw. More were coming. Jack gripped his weapon tighter. "You ready?" Tira turned to him. "Now we stop running," she said, and together they prepared for war. Not just for their own freedom, but for everyone who had once trembled in the dark. The night sky lit up with flashes of blue and red above the ruined tower. Search ships circled like hungry beasts. On the ground, Jack stood beside Tara, the rifle heavy in his hands. The message Tara had sent echoed through unknown channels, and the hunters had answered this time in full force. Tara stared up, her face calm but serious. "They want to erase," she whispered. "Erase voices, erase us." Jack looked at her, proud and worried. "Then we don't let them," he said. "Not this time." They had little to fight with, just a few homemade charges, scavenged weapons, and courage. But courage had weight when fear was heavy, and Tira had changed. She was no longer the trembling girl in a trap. She was something more now, stronger, brighter, alive. As the first squad dropped near the tower, Jack opened fire. The enemy returned with heat rays, burning through the dirt and stone. Tira dodged and rolled, blasting back with a stolen pulse launcher. Their small camp became a battleground, just when it seemed like they would be surrounded. A new sound filled the air. A different kind of ship, smaller, older, but fast. Tira looked up and gasped. "It worked," she said with hope. Jack squinted, then smiled. Out of the clouds came two rebel crafts, scratched, patched, but ready. They opened fire on the hunter ship, pushing it back with a shower of sparks. The skies lit up like firecrackers. The hunters scrambled to retreat, unprepared for resistance. One of the rebel ships landed behind the tower. The small alien woman stepped out. She looked like Tira. Same silver hair, same glow in her eyes. "Tira." She called. Tira ran to her, her voice shaking. "Lyra." They embraced tightly. Jack stepped back, letting them reconnect. More rebels arrived, some wounded, some scared, but none were running anymore. The fight was short after that. The hunters were pushed back, their trackers destroyed, their ship lifted into the sky, smoke trailing behind it. They had lost this time not just a target, but their hold on a secret world of silence. When the dust settled, Jack stood quietly near the tower ruins. He felt tired, sore, and unsure of what came next. Tira walked over, eyes glowing with something. "New piece, you helped start this," she said. Jack shook his head. "You did," she smiled gently, "but I never could. Without you, the rebels offered to take her to their hidden colony, a safe place where she could live, rebuild, and never fear again." Tira turned to Jack, her voice soft. "You come?" Jack looked toward the forest, the cabin, the life he had built in solitude. Then he looked at her, this brave alien girl who had gone from prisoner to fighter. "Yeah," he said slowly, I think I've been waiting for a reason to leave." Weeks passed, and the rebel colony bloomed. Homes were built from broken ships, walls painted in bright colors. Laughter returned slowly at first, then stronger. Tira worked alongside her people, teaching others how to remove trackers. She walked tall, her back no longer bent by fear. Jack helped build shelters, fixed machines, and shared his tools with the makers. But more than that, he brought a new kind of trust. A human who stayed, who never asked for anything in return. Just freedom and peace. One morning, as the twin suns rose behind the cliffs, Tira stood beside Jack. They looked out across the colony, now full of life and noise. "This place?" she whispered. "It was once a prison." Jack nodded. "Now it's a home." She smiled at him. "No," she said, "you are my home." Jack felt his chest tighten. He didn't need big words. He just reached out, took her hand, and held it. No more running, no more cages. Just two souls, one human, one alien, bound not by fear, but by something stronger, hope, and in that strange corner of the galaxy, once filled with traps and pain, a new life began, not just for Tara, but for all those who had once trembled, because one man, with a broken trap and an open heart, chose kindness, and that changed everything.